I tell folks that I was born and raised in the South. I was born here in Atlanta, Georgia, and my father played for the Denver Broncos. I'm the smallest male in my family. And my father's a Baptist minister. And my father believed in call and response. And he also believed in laying hands on you. So we're going to try that one more time. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm still in the South. So, Kristen, I thought that you wore red because of Chick-fil-A. You said something about an apple, but I thought it was because of Chick-fil-A. But it's truly a pleasure to be here. It's truly a pleasure to honor an organization. And Fifi, it's truly a pleasure to be in your presence. Fifi, you don't know this about me, and Mrs. Deal, you don't know this about me, but I'm a student of history. I particularly appreciate American history. And I think about a story often of two parents, Elizabeth and Nathaniel, who in 1774 had a child on September 26 in Leominster, Massachusetts, about 35 miles outside of Boston. 1774, they welcomed this child into the world, and they realized early on that this was a peculiar child. Later on, as he grew up, he was truly a peculiar child. He was a vegetarian. Now, I sell chicken for a living, so that's really peculiar to me. He loved plants, and he loved to plant things. As he grew older, he actually continued to plant things. And he could be seen around town barefoot with a tin cap on his head. And he would have seeds in his pocket. And every once in a while, he would drop these seeds. And when he died years later, he had planted over 15,000 apple trees throughout Ohio, Pennsylvania, Ontario, Illinois, over 1,200 acres of apple trees. They called this gentleman Johnny Appleseed. And we've all heard the story of Johnny Appleseed. But Johnny Appleseed was planting trees for a community so that he could give back. And in many ways, when we give a child a book, we are planting a seed just like Johnny Appleseed. Now, I don't really have a green thumb, but I do have the ability to help children. And when I think about planting seeds, and when I think about a book, one of my favorite poems comes to mind. It's entitled, I Opened a Book, by Julia Donaldson. I opened the book and I strode in. Now nobody can find me. I've left my chair, my house, my road, my town and my world behind me. I'm wearing the cloak, I've slipped on the ring, I've swallowed the magic potion. I fought with a dragon, dined with a king, and dived into a bottomless ocean. I opened a book and made some friends, I shared their tears and laughter, and followed their road with its bumps and bends to the happily ever after. I finished my book and out I came, the cloak no longer hiding me. My chair and my house are just the same, but I have a book inside of me. When a child reads a book, the world opens up. It becomes colorful and amazing. Expectations soar for that child. Books seed imagination. They seed imagination. But people, just like you, mentors, just like you, nurture imagination into reality. When we offer ourselves, we are offering our lives, a life full of journey, a life full of lessons learned, a life full of helpful hints, complete with footnotes, complete with living illustrations. We offer ourselves as an open book. In my life, I've had people help me along the way. In particular, I think of one person who helped me along the way. Had many mentors and many family members who invested in me. But I have one person who I often think about when I think about my own life. I said I grew up here in Atlanta, Georgia. And when I was in first grade, I went to a very prestigious private school here in Atlanta. It is still here. It is still prestigious. And when I was there, about the middle of the year, my teacher called my mother. And she said, "Mrs. Bullard, Rodney is a fine young man, and we enjoy having him in our class. But he's not reading on grade level. And we would like to place him in a developmentally slower class." My mother, an educator herself, had a dilemma and a decision to make. She chose to remove me from that school. And she put me in a less prestigious school, a school that does not exist any longer. She put me in a school called the Rainbow Christian School in Decatur, Georgia. And I remember getting there, it was December. And I was coming in the middle of the school year. I didn't know any of the kids. I didn't know any of the teachers. This was a foreign building. And they had cinder block gray walls. Now, I had not ever been to prison. I still haven't been to prison. But this looked like prison to me. And I got there and I was deathly afraid. And I saw this little lady. She was about yay tall, and I was taller than her even in first grade. And I looked out and she said, "My name is Mrs. Janie Adams." And I cried. And she finally got me to come into the classroom. And I sat there day after day. And at the end of the school year, Mrs. Adams called my mother too. And she said, "Mrs. Bullard, Rodney is a fine young man, but he's not reading on grade level." But what she said next changed the trajectory of my life. She said, "But I would like to take him for the summer, and I would like to tutor him." And she did just that. And I remember July and August, I was sitting there looking at the other kids play. Mrs. Adams was teaching me to read phonetically. And at the end of the summer, I was reading 2 and 3 grade levels ahead of my peers. Mrs. Adams invested in me. She gave me a skill to read, planting seeds of exploration and confidence, through which she offered me the pages of her book, a chapter on learning, a chapter on compassion, a chapter on giving. You see, everyone has a story, and we are all, every last one of us, books in progress. Our pages are still being written. So I ask you, what is your chapter? Who is reading your book? Who are you inspiring? Mrs. Adams used her story to help me write my story. Whose story are you helping to author? See, Page Turners is planting seeds by offering books, both real and figurative, to our most precious resource, our children. Had an opportunity to be with Dr. Karstoffen, the superintendent of schools for the Atlanta Public School System today. And I realized as we were talking that first graders, second graders, and third graders in Atlanta Public Schools, 60% of them failed to read on grade level. 60% of them failed to read on grade level. And if you do not read on grade level by third grade, your chances of success are greatly diminished. I realized that in the city of Atlanta, if you're born into poverty, the number of words that you actually speak are greatly fewer than the number of words than someone born into greatness, born into wealth. And because of that, only 5% of children born into poverty in the city of Atlanta actually get out of poverty. See, a book is a vehicle. A book is a vehicle to get out of poverty. A book is a vehicle for our communities. A book is a vehicle for our families. A book is a vehicle for us to change the trajectory of many, many lives, but also our communities. Because of that, Chick-fil-A is proud to give $5,000 tonight. We hope this goes towards making sure that every child grows up to be everything that they were created to be. Thank you for your time, thank you for your attention, and thank you for supporting this great organization.